Okay, so in this video, I'm going to talk about my top 20 favourite films from 1985. These are all in accordance with the release dates from IMDb, and again, these are just my top 20 personal favourite films from 85. No right or wrong, just in my opinion, the top 20 that I thought were my favourite and I enjoyed the most. So that being said, I did actually see quite a lot of films from 85, talking about 50 to 60 films. So I do have quite a lot of honourable mentions I want to get through. I think it will be a bit of a disservice to them not to give them a little bit of a shout out. So that being said, I'll try and get through these as quickly as possible. So the first one I want to give a shout out to is Phenomena, produced by Dario Argento, who did some of my favourite stuff from the 70s. Yeah, great sort of creepy movie this with Jennifer Connelly. Next one is the Italian horror film Demons. Really creepy movie, this one, with some great effects. I really enjoyed it. Next up is the British horror sci-fi film Life Force. Really enjoyed this one. Really creepy at times. Next up is Rocky 4. Probably the most entertaining of the Rocky films in terms of like popcorn blockbuster value. Great to see Rocky fight the Russian Ivan Drago, played by Dolph Lundgren, and that Robert Tepper song plays while Rocky's driving is absolutely badass. Really love that song. Next up is Disney's The Black Cauldron. Bit of the sort of the black sheep of the Disney films, this one, no pun intended, but it sort of came out during the dark ages of Disney, where Disney films weren't really making that much money, and sort of there was a bit of a dip in quality of the films. But this one's sort of developed a bit of a cult following over the years. There's great voice work in it by John Hurt as the Horn King, but I really enjoyed it. Thought it was fine. Next up is Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, or Mad Max 3. Just not as good as the first two. This one, in my opinion, I enjoyed them a hell of a lot more. This one's fine. Yeah, it's okay. Just quite underwhelming and a little bit disappointing compared to the first two. Next up is Ridley Scott's Legend. Stars a really young Tom Cruise and Tim Curry as Darkness, the villain in this. No, say no more. With Tim Curry, absolutely spectacular actor. Next up is sort of comedy Summer Rental with John Candy. Thought this one was quite funny. Next up is one of two films with Michael J. Fox that came out this year, and that is Teen Wolf. It's just a fine little comedy. Yeah, nothing offensive about it. Teen Wolf 2 is absolute garbage, though. Yeah. Next up is Fletch with Chevy Chase. Just a harmless little comedy film about a detective. Next up is Explorers. Stars a young Ethan Hawke and a young River Phoenix. About these kids that sort of build this spaceship and go into space and meet these aliens. Yeah, it's just a fine kids movie. Next up is Lost in America. Sort of underrated film, this one, about this couple that sort of give everything up and invest in a motorhome and basically just go around traveling the States. But the guy played by Albert Brooks sort of discovers that his wife's got a bit of a gambling problem and it gets them into a bit of trouble. It's sort of like a hijinks movie. Next up is Just One of the Guys. Thought this one was quite underrated. It's classic sort of liar reveal film. If you don't know what that is, that's just when pretty much the story to a film is someone's keeping a secret for the entire film, and they don't want to tell someone and they don't know how to tell them, and loads of films have done this trope, but this one was actually all right. It wasn't too bad. It can be a bit predictable, but yeah, no, it's fine. Next up is Real Genius, with pretty much a young Val Kilmer, sort of about these teen scientists. Yeah, it was harmless fun. Speaking of teen scientists, my next pick is one that really just missed my main list. Is John Hughes's Weird Science. Pretty much follows these two geeks at school who just can't get girlfriends, so they basically decide to make one using science. Yeah, it's as wacky as it sounds, and one of the most entertaining and memorable performances in this is by Bill Paxton, who's pretty much great in everything he's in. But yeah, really enjoyed this one. Next up for me is another one that just didn't quite get into the top 20, and that is Disney's Return to Oz. Really sort of creepy sequel to the original one, and just handles it in a completely different way, and is just so full of colours and imagination. And the wheelers in this are absolutely terrifying. I remember seeing it as a kid. But yeah, really enjoyed it. Next up is The Sure Thing, with John Cusack, who was sort of really coming into his own as an actor in this decade. There's another film in my top 20 list with him in that I actually enjoyed a bit more than this, but this one's fine. It's about sort of like college students who are this boy and this girl who are both sort of in relationships. The girl is, but they sort of like discover a bit more about each other and end up falling in love. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's a harmless, fun film. Next up is a Christopher Columbus written film, Young Sherlock Holmes. I heard about this one and decided to give it a watch. Yeah, it's really fun. Really, what you'd expect from a young Sherlock Holmes film. Yeah, hugely entertaining. Next up is probably one of the best critically acclaimed films from this year, but just didn't make the list for me. There were just movies I enjoyed more, and that is Akira Kurosawa's Ran. Great Japanese epic war film. Pretty much about this king who is debating whether to abdicate, and he's got these three sons who could sort of take over. Yeah, just an absolute epic movie. Next up is Mask, with Cher, Sam Elliott and Eric Stoltz. Really sad movie, this one. Follows sort of the young tragic life of Rocky Dennis, who was born with this really rare deformity. It's got a young performance in it by Laura Dern as well, who plays his girlfriend. But yeah, just really real sad, depressing movie, but it's definitely worth a watch. Next up is Death of a Salesman. Really good adaptation with Dustin Hoffman and John Malkovich. Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I believe Tim Burton's first film as a director, based on a television show. I never really saw it. My knowledge of Pee-wee's pretty much this film, and I've seen Big Top Pee-wee, which wasn't very good, but this one's pretty good. So it's basically Pee-wee Herman, who's a bit of a nutter, and his bike gets stolen, and the film's pretty much him trying to get his bike back. There's a scene with a character called Large Marge, and that scene will make the shit jump out of your ass. It's fucking terrifying. It just sort of really comes out of nowhere, but yeah, definitely worth checking out if you love Tim Burton stuff. It's a good early one from him. Next up is period drama, Room with a View. Yeah, just sort of like your standard period drama. It's good. Yeah, and it's quite enjoyable. It's got a good cast. Got Judi Dench, Simon Callow, and Daniel Day-Lewis in supporting roles. Yeah, definitely worth checking out. Next up for me is sort of it's a Christmas movie it's not a great Christmas movie, but the first half of it is just classic Christmas. It oozes Christmas, and that's Santa Claus the movie. The guy who plays Santa Claus is just like one of the most charming actors ever in this role. Really makes it his own. You got Dudley Moore as one of the elves as well. It's a shame that it's the second half of the movie, all the stuff with John Lithgow in it, where it really falls apart for me. But he's great in the role. It's just the story's a bit weak to the rest of the film. I find it just sort of loses itself, and the film just falls apart for me at the end. But this is something that's pretty much on ITV like every year, and it's just one of them sort of classic Christmas movies that's always on. But as I say, not great, but it's definitely serviceable and watchable. You can definitely get something from it. Next up for me is the highest grossing Western from this year. That is Clint Eastwood's Pale Rider. Yeah, just classic Clint Eastwood Western genre. Again, another one that just didn't quite get into the top 20 for me, but it's still definitely worth a watch. And my last honourable mention is another film that should be on my list for me that I really enjoyed, and that is The Legend of Billie Jean. Just couldn't get this one on into the list, but it would have been. Great story to this one that pretty much really sort of captures the Me Too movement from the 80s, from a few years ago in the 80s, sort of about Billie Jean, who is trying to get her brother's scooter back from this kid that stole it, and she goes to ask for it back from the kid's dad, and he sort of sexually assaults her, and she ends up shooting him in self-defense and going on the run with the police. And the guy who sexually abuses like, oh, she just shot me, I never touched her, and all that shit. And it sort of starts this movement. She ends up seeing a video of like Joan of Arc, so she cuts all her hair off to try and look like Joan of Arc, and it starts this movement. All the girls that follow her end up doing the same. Yeah, just absolutely really enjoyed this one. One of my favourites, but just couldn't I just couldn't squeeze it in down to 20. But definitely worth checking out. Hugely enjoyed it. That song by Pat Benatar as well, Invincible, is awesome. Yeah, check it out if you've not seen it. So, they're all my honourable mentions. Oh, no, sorry. Do have one more. The last appearance of Roger Moore as James Bond in A View to a Kill. Hugely entertaining film. Not a very good film, but the villains in it give 100%. You've got Christopher Walken and Grace Jones as Zorin and Mayday, respectively. They make the movie. It's such a shame with Roger Moore because he was just too old for Bond, in my opinion, at this point. I really would have loved to have seen this film with Timothy Dalton. But yeah, as I say, it's regarded as one of the worst Bonds. I wouldn't go that far. It's not great by any means, but it's still entertaining. You can still get something out of it. So yeah, that is my honourable mentions, all boxed off for this year. So that being said, I'm going to get straight into the list now. So at number 20, I actually have two films. I couldn't decide which one to leave off because I got pretty much the same feeling from both films. Very similar to my feelings towards each one. So I was like, right, okay, I'll put them both at the number 20 spot, and that is Silverado and Police Story. Yeah, so Silverado first, great sort of western with a great, phenomenal cast. You got Kevin Kline, Rosanna Arquette, John Cleese. I was really surprised to see in this as well. Kevin Costner, Jeff Goldblum, Linda Hunt, Danny Glover, Brian Dennehy. Just a huge ensemble cast and a great western. And the other one is Police Story with Jackie Chan. Really, really good underrated action movie with a great set piece at the end taking place in a shopping mall. Really, really loved it. As I said, both sort of gave me a 7 out of 10 vibe. Very, very similar in terms of outcome. Once you've invested in both films after you've watched them, you just get very similar feelings towards both of them. Just really, really good films. My opinion, if you've not seen them, check them both out. Very different genres, but very similar experiences in terms of the outcome. Love these two. So coming up next for me at the number 19 spot is Stephen King's first film of the sort of historical drama genre, and that is The Colour Purple. Really, really well directed first attempt at this genre. Huge film in terms of what it deals with. So you've got sort of topics like racism, poverty, incest, paedophilia, domestic abuse. It's really, really hard hitting stuff. You've got great performances as well by Danny Glover, Whoopi Goldberg, who I believe this was her first film as well, and Oprah Winfrey as well. It sort of follows like the struggles of these two sisters through over a long period of time. But yeah, as I said, it's masterfully directed. Probably one of Spielberg's most underrated movies. I absolutely loved it. Not the first, again, another film I didn't enjoy the first time I saw it, but the second viewing, it just sort of clicked with me, and I really appreciated the competence a lot more with it. But definitely worth checking out if you've not seen it. So at the number 18 spot for me is a film called Heaven Help Us. Not a massively popular film, but I really enjoyed it. It follows sort of these five students at this private Catholic school, and the way it's run is very, very formal. And it sort of follows them through their sort of teen life, sort of a coming of age story, really. Sort of set round about in the early 50s, and it follows them at school, and there's a teacher there who's got a very sort of unorthodox attitude to students, and he's a bit excessive. He uses a bit of unnecessary violent form of punishment. Very, very satisfying ending, which I absolutely loved. There's a very, very humorous scene where all the students are at chapel, and the main one of the priests at the chapel has a clicker, which means every time it's clicked, you either stand or sit down. And one of the other students also has the same clicker, and he keeps pressing it, so all the students are constantly sitting up and down. But yeah, the cast in this is great. You've got Donald Sutherland, the late great John Hurd, Andrew McCarthy, Mary Stuart Masterson, Kevin Dillon, and this chap who I didn't realise was a very young Patrick Dempsey, as my girlfriend's a massive Grey's Anatomy fan. She really enjoyed it because she noticed he was in it. And I didn't pick him out because he's so young in the film. But it's definitely worth checking out if you've not seen it. Yeah, just this great sort of Catholic drama. So next up for me is probably one of Martin Scorsese's most underrated films, and that is After Hours. So pretty much the way to describe this is you're trying to get home, and everything that stops you, that could stop you, possibly does stop you. We follow this guy who literally is just trying to get home in New York, and he just comes across so many characters and so many scenarios that completely stop him from getting from home. It takes him hours. Eventually, he meets women. There's burglaries going on. There's murder going on. It's just absolutely insane. But yeah, brilliant, competent Scorsese film. He's really good as well. Because I know Scorsese's pretty much famous for directing gangster movies, but little films like this he does are just really good as well. Really overlooked. Check it out if you've not seen it. So coming up next for me, the number 16 spot is the other John Cusack film I was talking about, and that is Better Off Dead. The premise to this pretty much is John Cusack's character's pretty much got he's dating this really good looking girl and at school, and she leaves him for the school's main jock pretty much, and he sort of spends the entire film trying to get her back. And the best way to really do that is there's a skiing competition coming up, and he enlists in taking part in it because he thinks if I win that contest, I'll earn her back. There's a song in this as well that plays in the middle at this sort of the school dance that I absolutely love. It's called One Way Love. Great 80s tune. But yeah, it's just kind of like one of those little classic 80s teen comedy type films, the coming of age movies that were really popular at the time. Massively enjoy this one. Hugely entertaining. You got Kurt Armstrong in it as well, who plays his best friend. He's kind of like one of those actors that popped up in movies like Risky Business and Revenge of the Nerds, and this as well, in the 80s. Hugely entertaining actor. But yeah, no, definitely worth seeing if you've not seen it. So coming up next for me is Joel Schumacher's St. Elmo's Fire. Probably most famous for directing the disaster that was Batman and Robin. But outside of the Batman universe, he did direct some really good films, and this is one of them. Sort of seen as a sort of unofficial sequel to The Breakfast Club, this film pretty much has probably about 60% of the same cast, using pretty much the Brat Pack, which were like a young group of hot actors at the time. So yeah, this film pretty much follows a group of friends from college, and it's sort of about them coping with life after college and how things don't really go according to plan as they thought they would. Relationships break down, new relationships are formed. Just sort of focuses on those changes that life throws at you and coping with those changes. Not as good as The Breakfast Club, but is still that it sort of lives in the shadow of The Breakfast Club. This film, it's not as good, I don't think, but it still doesn't mean that this is bad. It's still a great film. Characters in it are great. The film can capture the great evolution of the characters in the film. The characters we meet at the beginning of the film are not the characters we see at the end of the film. They've all sort of changed in different ways. but hugely enjoyable. As I said, The Breakfast Club sort of did that a lot better, and I'll talk about that film later on in the list. But yeah, just still a fantastic, entertaining, enjoyable film, and the soundtrack to this film's great as well. So yeah, coming up next for me at the number 14 spot is Kiss of the Spider Woman, which starring Raul Julia and William Hurt. William Hurt actually won the Oscar for this film. So it's a very small film. Majority of it sort of really takes place in a prison cell. So the film's set in Brazil, and it sort of really focuses on the dialogue and conversations between the two prisoners that are in this cell. So you've got William Hurt's character, who's been arrested in Brazil for being homosexual and having sex with an underage boy. And you've got Raul Julia, who's sort of like, he's been in prison for like his involvement in sort of leftist revolutionary political group. And Raul Julia was just an absolute phenomenal actor, gone far too soon. Probably most famous for playing Gomez in the two Addams Family films. And he obviously went on to do Street Fighter when he was diagnosed with cancer, which he basically made that film for his kids because his kids wanted to do it. But what an absolute talent he was, and we were robbed of him. He was a phenomenal actor. So yeah, getting back to the film, there's just the two of them are just absolute powerhouse actors in this film. Really good if you've not seen it. Definitely worth checking out. Hugely enjoyed it for this, just on the basis of the acting alone. It's phenomenal. So coming up next for me is the film that actually won Best Picture for this year, and that is Out of Africa with Robert Redford and Meryl Streep. So it sort of follows Meryl Streep's character, who's Danish, who goes to she gets married and is in Africa trying to start this farm, where she meets Robert Redford's character as well. Great romantic drama, this one. Directed by Sidney Pollack as well. Great director. It's a film that sort of ticks all the boxes that the Oscars are looking for. Was got mixed reviews when it came out. You know, critics were a bit divided on it. I absolutely love it purely for the scope of the film, and the scenery shots are absolutely great. The story's great. I won't spoil the ending, but it's a bit not bittersweet, but you really feel it. But yeah, as I said, if you want to see all the films that won Best Picture, this is a good one. Not the best from the 80s, but overall it's still a good film. So coming up next for me is a film that pretty much is at the other end of the spectrum from Out of Africa, and that is Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Absolute adrenaline, testosterone fueled film that cranks it up to 11. The way I sort of see this is like a sort of a let loose version of Taken. Pretty much this agent, John Matrix, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, gets his daughter gets kidnapped. And the film is basically him trying to get his daughter back. All the action tropes from an Arnold Schwarzenegger film you would expect to see. The scene for me that absolutely makes this a standout, though, is you've got Vernon Wells, who plays Bennett, the main sort of one of the main antagonists in the film. And there's a scene at the end with the standoff between Schwarzenegger and Bennett, and it basically just becomes a contest of who can make the sillier face. And it is absolutely hysterical. on Blu-ray, it just looks great when you press the pause button on some of their faces. It's absolutely brilliant. But yeah, everything you would expect from this type of movie. It's one I grew up with, watching many times, and I hope to watch it many more times in the future. Just absolutely top-notch entertainment. So coming up next for me, at the number 11 spot, is Terry Gilliam's Brazil. Again, another film I didn't really like the first time I saw it. Second time I saw it, the ideas in the film just really, really sort of sunk in with me and hit me a bit more. And so it sort of takes place in this really hectic dystopian future. Everything's sort of done at like 1,000,000 miles an hour. And Jonathan Pryce's character is really like sort of in the mix of this, but he sort of has these dreams where he's like, which give him this sort of like escapism. He sort of becomes like this winged hero. You've got great performances in it as well by De Niro and Bob Hoskins in it as well. Jonathan Pryce, absolutely another great sort of British actor, with a lot of entertaining sort of drawing in powers. But yeah, the scene for me that's probably the most memorable is the way this film ends. It ends on such a disturbing note. Kind of like this massive downer. You sort of think the film's got this fantastic happy ending send-off, and then it just pulls the rug from under your feet. Michael Palin as the villain in this film, absolutely phenomenal. Does not get enough credit in this film. The scenery as well with Jonathan Pryce, where he's in the chair at the end and the camera just zooms out. It's just absolutely brilliant. Hugely unique film. You can really only compare Gilliam to himself with his other films. Not my favourite Gilliam film. That probably is The Adventures of Baron Munchausen for me. But yeah, still massively entertaining. A lot of good themes in this as well. Great cast. Hugely enjoyed it. So coming up next for me, the number 10, as we crack into the top 10, is Woody Allen's The Purple Rose of Cairo. So basically the premise to this is pretty much you've got Mia Farrow's character who's not in a very good relationship. Her husband's a bit abusive and shades a bit of mental abuse towards his wife. So she ends up going to the cinema to see this film called The Purple Rose of Cairo, which stars Jeff Daniels playing this actor. And as she's watching the film, she relates to Jeff Daniels' character in the film, and the actual character in the film sort of steps out of the screen and ends up forming a relationship with her, and they start to fall in love. But as he's left the film, the other actors in the film are just stuck there and need him to come back so they can finish the film. So what ends up happening is the actual actor, played by Jeff Daniels, is called in to try and convince his character to go back into the film. I won't spoil the end, but it just hits you at the end, the way it's left. But yeah, one of Woody Allen's probably most underrated films in my opinion. Probably this and Bullets Over Broadway are two of my favourites by him. Hugely entertaining film though. Very underrated in my opinion. So coming up next for me, the number 9 spot is actually another two films that I really, really couldn't pick between. Both very, very similar genres, both very, very similar types of films. Just got the exact same feeling from each after watching both of them. Both left me feeling very satisfied in what they put on screen. And it's sort of two sort of horror / comedy films, and that is Return of the Living Dead and Reanimator. So to get into Return of the Living Dead first, the title may throw some people off, but this is not a sequel to anything. This is a pretty much a standalone film that you can just go into not having seen anything. So it pretty much set up that George Romero's film Night of the Living Dead wasn't actually a film. It was a documentary based on the dead coming back to life, and how in this little town the same thing actually happens, and you've just got some really great colourful characters during the dead coming back to life, dealing with it in very humorous ways. Very, very creative in the zombie designs and things like that. Yeah, and again has this very strange ending that I won't spoil, but it's worth checking out. It's just, if you like sort of 80s zombie movies, this one's a must to see. So, and then getting into Reanimator, the premise of this sort of follows a scientist who believes that after something dies, there's like a sort of 10 to 15 minute window where they can be brought back to life. So he invents this sort of chemical that he injects into a recently deceased being, and it brings them back to life, but it sort of turns them into a zombie. The scientist is played by Jeffrey Combs, who's another actor who's great in everything he's in. This has got the famous head-giving head scene, which I won't dare go into, but if you've seen the film, you know what I'm on about, and it's just wacky entertainment, and the fun levels are just off the chart with both of these films. Just sort of great sort of zombie films. But there is another zombie film on this list further on that I did enjoy a hell of a lot more than these two. But these two are still so great and definitely worth checking out. So coming up next for me, at the number 8 spot, is Harrison Ford in Witness. Saw this one many years ago, and then I was actually on a trip to Pennsylvania, where most of this film was set, and we watched it on the coach because we were traveling to where it was filmed. So the film basically follows this detective played by Harrison Ford, who's investigating a murder, and the only witness to this murder is a small Amish boy played by Lucas Haas. And for the protection of the Amish boy, Harrison Ford sort of adopts the Amish way of life. He ends up going out there, staying with them. And yeah, on this trip I went on, we ended up watching the film because we were passing through pretty much Amish country in the States. And yeah, it's just a great detective story. So basically, the Amish boy is witness to this murder that takes place in this bathroom, and the murderers sort of know someone's there, but the boy gets away. And there's a scene at the police station where the boy recognises one of the killers, and it sends chills down your spine. It's masterfully captured and filmed, this scene. You've got a great performance as well by a young Viggo Mortensen in this as well. Really good action sequences towards the end as well. Hugely enjoyed it. One of my favourite Harrison Ford films. Was nominated for Best Actor. Obviously lost to William Hurt, but yeah, check this one out if you've not seen it. It's keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's fantastic. So coming up next for me at the number 7 spot is To Live and Die in LA. Not much to say about this one. It's sort of, the plot involves these two agents following a counterfeit money case, and the film is basically what lengths they will go to try and crack this case. The moral challenges they've got in trying to solve it and put a bed to it. Absolutely just great, phenomenal action film. You've got Willem Dafoe, William Peterson, massively underrated actor. I'm going to be talking about another film with him in the next video on 86. But yeah, as I said, cracking action film. Massively underrated. If you've not seen it, check it out. Coming up next for me at the number 6 spot is a film actually based on a board game, and that is Clue. Massively fun, entertaining film with an absolute stellar cast. You've got Michael McKean, Christopher Lloyd, Tim Curry as Wadsworth the butler. Oh my god, just absolutely phenomenal. I cannot praise the guy enough. Massively entertaining actor. So the film basically is set at this mansion, and all these guests are sort of invited for this dinner party by this mysterious host, and the host ends up being murdered. And the film is basically a whodunit, and it's massively entertaining. I won't dare spoil the ending, but it is so different and so unique and intriguing. I don't think I've ever seen another film do the ending like this to a whodunit. But yeah, check it out. The movie looks phenomenal on Blu-ray as well. Check it out if you've not seen it. Absolutely fantastic film. So coming up at the number 5 spot for me is the other zombie film I was talking about, the third George Romero film in his Dead series, and that is Day of the Dead. Not much of a plot to this. Again, similar to Dawn of the Dead. It's start to finish slap bang in the middle of this apocalypse. Majority of the film takes place sort of underground in a bunker. And the plot is mainly the friction between the living characters in the film. Some great over-the-top performances that make it absolutely entertaining. But the star of the film, for me, is Tom Savini's makeup effects. Second to none in this film. His absolute masterpiece in visual practical effects. CGI doesn't hold a fucking candle to it. It's so good, so creative. It sort of feels like anything they were told they couldn't film, they just did. In terms of effects, just absolutely brutal, so realistic. The zombies alone look absolutely great. This is Tom Savini's best makeup when doing zombies. Like Dawn of the Dead, he couldn't quite get it there. There's a few scenes in Dawn of the Dead where I don't think actually some of the zombies are wearing makeup. But in this, it must have took them forever to try and come up with so many different masks and different looks. Just such a masterpiece in terms of that. It's got some really good rewatch value to it as well. Just delivers 11 out of 10 on the gore and the violence. Just massively entertaining. So coming up next for me, the number 4 spot is a horror film I grew up watching as a kid. I absolutely adore this film. Everything about it, I just fell in love with the first time I saw it. I was at school, in middle school, when I first saw this film. It was on late at Channel 5, on I believe a Friday night, and I absolutely loved it. And that is Fright Night. Basically, the premise of this film is pretty much this kid who loves to watch sort of horror films from like the sort of 50s and 60s, ends up falling asleep watching telly, and then wakes up one night in his bedroom and he sees that the new neighbour moving in is a vampire. And of course, when he tells everyone, nobody believes him. Absolutely stuck in this rut. And he's absolutely terrified for his life. His girlfriend doesn't believe him. His best friend doesn't believe him. His mother doesn't believe him. And he ends up tracking down the host of his favourite show that presents all these horror films, Peter Vincent, played by the great Roddy McDowall. And he tries to get his help, and he doesn't believe him either. But it leads to them, all these people he's told, that they sort of discover his neighbour's a vampire by themselves. And Chris Sarandon, who plays Jerry Dandridge, who's the vampire in the film, has such a quality charm about him. There's a scene at a disco and he just walks in like he absolutely owns the place, and everyone's sort of fascinated by him. Charlie, who's the boy who's trying to convince everyone he's a vampire, his girlfriend Amy is sort of the reincarnation of a love of Jerry's from his past, which I really like, because that's kind of similar to how the 92 Dracula film sort of went down that route as well. Just as I said, hugely entertaining horror film. Great, probably the best vampire film from the 80s. I absolutely love it. So much fun. Very bit dated with the 80s music, but that adds to the charm of it for me. You've got Charlie's best friend as well, Evil Ed, who could be a little bit annoying. He never really bothered me in the film though. The actor though is also in Heaven Help Us, but the sequel to this that came out, he turned down the role, and that actually led to him doing a career in gay pornography. But yeah, getting back to this, absolutely hugely entertaining film. Childhood staple for me. It shouldn't be, but it absolutely is. I loved this film. It sort of did everything I love about the genre. The performances in it are great. The film's actually funny as well. It makes me laugh at times, with Roddy McDowall's character, who's got not a bit of a backstory, but what he's going through in the film is just hugely enjoyable and entertaining as well. But definitely worth checking out if you've not seen it. So coming in at the number 3 spot for me is another childhood staple, probably one of my most favourite adventure films as well, and that is the Steven Spielberg produced Richard Donner film, The Goonies. Anyone who's sort of seen this loves this film. Follows a group of kids who live on the Goondocks, and all their homes are going to be foreclosed, and they don't have. It's the last weekend before they have to move out, and The homes are going to be bulldozed to build pretty much a new settlement. And one of the kids, played by pretty much a very young and unrecognisable Sean Astin, probably most famous for the Lord of the Rings films. His father told him this story of a pirate called One-Eyed Willie who had this massive treasure and he was never found. And all the kids sort of like, well, it's the last weekend, let's just go on an adventure and try and find Willie's treasure. The villains in it are absolutely great. You've got the Fratellis, the mother and the two sons. There's a third one revealed about halfway through the film as well. One of those films for me that I saw on TV, I think it was on Channel 5 on like a Sunday afternoon, and I never caught the name of it, but I was so in love with what I was seeing. That was just one of the frustrations of growing up without the internet as a kid. You couldn't find the movie you were looking for. Great set pieces in it as well when the pirate ship's actually revealed at the end. So many fun sequences. You've got the piano. You've got the start of the film when all the kids are coming around to the house and they break the statue. You've got the pirate ship itself. You've got the ending when they come out and get help. You've got the scene with the well, which is really sort of a heartbreaking scene for one of the characters, and a great monologue with Sean Astin's Mikey character. Yeah, just a massively fun family film. Delivers on the entertainment. Got a young Josh Brolin in this as well. Thanos. Yeah, just a stellar film. Hugely enjoyable, hugely entertaining. Yeah, tons of fun. So coming in at the number 2 spot is actually my... this was actually my personal favourite, all-time favourite film for a while. And that is John Hughes' The Breakfast Club. I just completely related to this film and hooked into it. And the film is basically breaking the mold of stereotypes. Premise is very simple. It's set in it's set in pretty much one room in a library at a school on a Saturday detention, and 5 kids have to spend this 8 hours together on a Saturday, and they're all pretty much stereotypes. You know, one's a basket case, one's a criminal, one's a jock, one's a princess, and one's a nerd. And the conversations they have start the breakdown of their surface images, and they realise they're all pretty much the same. They all have a lot in common with each other. Masterfully written, masterfully acted, fantastic soundtrack. That's Simple Minds song is just phenomenal. I absolutely just love the film. I don't think today it could have been made, because I think pretty much kids nowadays would pretty much be locked into their phones rather than talk and find out about each other in a situation like this. But yeah, I give the film the highest praise. It ends on such a bittersweet note as well. It sort of leaves you thinking, will they or won't they still be friends after this? But yeah, and I really, really enjoy each individual reasons as to why they had to spend their Saturdays at this detention. Yeah, just hugely enjoyable. John Hughes's masterpiece in out of all the films he's written and directed. It's his magnum opus, absolute top of his apex for me. There's only one other film for me that I've learned to love over time from this year. So I'll get into that right now. So my number one pick from 1985 is the Steven Spielberg produced Robert Zemeckis film Back to the Future. Big shock. Not a film I loved the first time I saw it. A lot of it went over my head. Didn't really enjoy it at all. Didn't see the point in it. Thought it was massively overrated. Didn't keep my interest at all. But over the years, man, have I been wrong about this film. I never ever saw it as one I would rewatch. I watched this trilogy alone a couple of times a year. One of the most entertaining trilogies ever made. Was never intended to be a trilogy. The first film's very self-contained. It does end on a build-up to a possible sequel, but it was never really needed. I'm glad we got parts 2 and 3 though, because they both sort of are not repeats, but they can't exist without the first film, but they're still so entertaining in their own merit as well. So the film basically follows Marty McFly, played by Michael J. Fox. He did this in Teen Wolf in 85 as well. So it follows him, and he pretty much spends most of his time hanging out with Doc Brown, played by Christopher Lloyd, who the two of these have the most perfect chemistry together. Absolutely brilliant casting. And Doc Brown's pretty much this inventor, and none of his inventions have really worked, and he thinks he's sort of finally cracked time travel with this car. So he says to Marty, right, okay, well, I'll meet you at this mall 1 a.m, and it's really important come and see my latest invention. And it works. It works, but in order to build the time machine, he's had to sort of double cross some Libyans he's been working for. And they eventually show up and they kill Doc Brown right there and then. So the only thing Marty can do is get in the time machine, and he heads back to 1955 and ends up meeting his parents before they got together, and his presence there sort of interferes with that, and his mother in the past sort of likes him and doesn't really look twice at his father. And the bit of the film is basically him trying to fix that and trying to get back to 1985. Yeah, as I said, this film's pretty much perfect in its premise and its execution. Great final scene as well. I love the Earth Angel and the Johnny B. Good stuff at the very end. As I said, the acting in it is just completely on point. The chemistry with the actors, absolutely fantastic. Cameo by Huey Lewis as well, who did the theme song to this at the beginning of the film with the knockback. His parents as well at the film are not very they're not very sort of likable people. They're flawed people. His father George is a bit of a pushover and is not fantastic at confrontation. And Biff, oh my god, one of the best on-screen bullies ever. And by the end of the film, everything sort of changed for the better. As I said, very, very good self-contained first movie. The music in this as well by Alan Silvestri. The theme is just, oh my god, it gets you pumped. Just a fantastic theme to a fantastic film. It's my number one. I actually feel like watching this right now. But yeah, it's so good. If you've not seen it, do yourself a favor. You'll get invested, and by the end of the third film, you will be so satisfied with what you've watched. Massively entertaining trilogy. But the first one is the best of the three. Not my favourite, actually, out of the trilogy, but it is. It's the most competent and well made. Yeah, just a fantastic film. So that is it. That is my top 20 favourite films from 1985. Bit of a longer video. I know I'm trying to get through the honourable mentions as quickly as possible, but thanks for watching the full vid. Yeah, if you feel inclined to do so, please subscribe and please like the video and comment and whatnot. But yeah, just thanks again for watching, and hopefully, I'm hopefully going to be back soon with my top. How many was it? Yeah, my top 20 favourite films from 1986. Another year that pretty much packed a punch similar to this one. Some absolute masterpieces in there as well. So yeah, as I said, thanks very much for watching, and take care. I'll see you soon.